My name is C. Radhakrishna. I am working as a senior lecturer in chemistry at Government Polytechnic Gadwal. Okay, today we shall see osmosis, reverse osmosis, and its applications, desalination by electrodialysis, okay, and Nalgonda technique in this class. Before starting the class proper, let's try to recall what we have learned yesterday. Yesterday we have learned in yesterday's class. Just let's try to recapitulate. We have seen the characteristics of drinking water. Can you recall what are the characteristics of drinking water? The characteristics of drinking water may be summarized as the drinking water should be free from any color, any odor, and it should not have any particular taste. It should be pleasant in taste, not any particular taste. Okay, no smell, no color. Okay, we are all fond of colors and shades, different shades of colors, but when it comes to drinking water, it should not have any color. Okay, next, it should not have any dissolved salts of heavy metals like arsenic, antimony, bismuth, lead, etc. These salts of heavy metals are neurotoxic. They affect central nervous system as well as peripheral nervous system also. Besides being carcinogens, they are all known carcinogens. So the drinking water should be free from the dissolved salts of these, and water should not have any dissolved harmful gases. Any harmful gases dissolved in the water like oxides of sulfur, hydrogen sulfide, oxides of nitrogen, etc. Such gases should not be present in the dissolved in the water, drinking water. It should be free from those gases. The pH of the water should be slightly alkaline, that is between 7 and 8. We have seen from the pH scale that pH scale extends from 1 to 14. 1 to 7 is acidic, 7 exactly is neutral, and 7 to 14 is basic in nature, alkaline. Okay, so if it is between 7 and 8, it will be slightly alkaline. Even our body fluids, many of the body fluids are slightly alkaline in nature. The liquid present in the mouth, saliva, the saliva is alkaline in nature. Likewise, our blood, pH of blood is around 7.35. That is also slightly alkaline in nature. So the water we consume should also be better if it is slightly alkaline in nature. It should never be acidic. Okay. Then according to WHO prescribed limits, all these are WHO prescribed. Okay, WHO, World Health Organization. The fluoride content should be less than 2 parts per million parts of water. Likewise, turbidity. Turbidity means solids present, microscopic solids present in the water. We call that as a turbidity. If the water is not clear, okay, not crystal clear, something is present in the water which you cannot exactly pinpoint. Okay, that we call as that water we call as the water is turbid and it has turbidity. Okay, so the turbidity should not exceed 10 parts per million parts of water. These are some of the characteristics we have learned yesterday for the drinking water. Okay, then we have also learned preparation of water for drinking purpose. Who supplies us water? In the cities, it is municipal corporation, respective municipal corporation or panchayat at the village level. These local authorities, they have the responsibility to supply drinking water for us. Okay, where do they source the water from? They source the water from nearby freshwater source, which may be either a river or a tank or a reservoir. Sometimes even when none of these is available, sometimes they may dig a borewell and supply. So, but they cannot supply this water directly because it is unfit for drinking purpose. It will have lots of impurities. Okay, so the water has to be processed. It has to be subjected to certain treatments. Okay, this is what they do actually before sending the water to us for drinking purpose. How they prepare this water, we are going to see in this topic. We have learned in this topic rather yesterday in the yesterday's class. So this preparation for the water treatment is done in 3 stages. In the first stage, suspended particulate matter or large size particulate matter, solids, floating matter, all are removed. This process is called these particles are removed. Okay, particles are removed or impurities removed, suspended particulate matter is removed. In the second stage, filtration is done. The third stage, harmful microorganisms are killed. The third stage is called as sterilization or disinfection. Okay, so first stage, removal of suspended particulate matters. First, the water is sent through screens. This process is also called screening. Okay, whereby it is sent through screens, bar screens, in which the iron rods are placed vertically in the path of flowing water with a very little gap between them, so that only water flows and any other solid materials of large size they will be hindered and they can be removed from time to time to facilitate the flow of water. Okay, these are called bar screens. Likewise, mesh can also be used to prevent the solids or debris from remove debris from water. Okay, so bar screens and mesh screens are used to remove large size particles, debris, floating matter like twigs, leaves, plastic covers, papers, etc. Okay, this process is called screening. After screening, water will be pumped into huge tanks and will be left undisturbed for some time. Okay, left undisturbed for some time. The large and medium, even minute small size particles will settle down at the bottom of the tank. This process is called as sedimentation. But in the air surrounding us, even though we are able to see everything clearly, there will be dust floating around, minute particles of dust. You know it very well, right? Okay, if you switch on a torchlight, in its path you can see the moving of these dust particles. Okay, actually they are not, what you are seeing is not dust particles, but the light scattered by these dust particles. In the same way, in the water also, minute particles will be present floating around, which will not settle down due to gravitational pull because they are so minute and they, okay, to settle them down we add certain coagulants like alum, ferrous sulfate, sodium aluminate, etc. and stir the water, agitate the water. So then after leaving the water for some time, these microscopic particles or particles of colloidal dimensions will also settle down at the bottom. Okay, so that can be removed. The upper layers of water can be taken out. The precipitate can be removed. Okay, so that's how these particles are removed. Then this is the whole process called as removal of suspended SPM, suspended particulate matter, which takes place in 2 steps. First is screening and second is sedimentation and coagulation. Next it will be fed into filtration process. It will be subjected to filtration process. During the filtration, the water is made to flow through filter beds containing layers of fine sand, coarse sand, fine gravel, coarse gravel, as well as a layer of charcoal at the last, as a last layer. Okay, even if any other solids also, microscopic solids also present, they will also be removed by flowing the water or sending the water through these layers. Okay, sending the water through these layers that can also be removed. Okay, that can also be removed. So now the last layer, charcoal layer, not only filters but also it removes if any coloration is present to the water, it removes color acting as a bleaching agent, and secondly it absorbs if any dissolved gas are there present in the water, harmful dissolved gases, it absorbs them and it removes those gases as well. Okay. So from the filtration the water is taken to the third stage, that is called sterilization. Sterilization is the process of killing pathogenic microorganisms, okay, to make to disinfect the water. Okay. So this can be done either by boiling the water on a small scale at the household level. We know that boiling the water for some time at home, say 10 to 15 minutes, kills all the microorganisms and makes it fit for our consumption. Okay. But this can be adopted only at the household level or on a small scale. But on a large scale, municipality handles millions of gallons of water every day. So they cannot obviously they cannot boil the water. Okay. So what do? They do chlorination. Okay. For chlorinating water, they add either bleaching powder to the water, calcium oxychloride, or directly liquid chlorine to the water. Calcium bleaching powder or directly chlorine. When bleaching powder is added to the water, bleaching powder interacts with the water and reacts with the water and forms calcium hydroxide, and chlorine gas is liberated. If the liquid chlorine added directly, that is itself is chlorine. This chlorine reacts with water to form hydrochloric acid and hypochlorous acid, HOCl. Hydrochloric acid HCl is highly stable, nothing happens to it, but hypochlorous acid HOCl is highly unstable and immediately decomposes into HCl and oxygen atom, atomic oxygen or nascent oxygen it is called as. This nascent oxygen is extremely reactive, being a free radical, and it kills all the microorganisms which are present in the water. So the action of bleaching powder chlorination is to generate nascent oxygen or atomic oxygen which is actual bactericidal or microbicidal. Okay, that's how it acts. Next, the third method of sterilization is sending ozonization. Say ozone is a gas, its formula is O3. When ozone gas is sent into water or bubbled into water, it decomposes into O2 plus nascent oxygen or atomic oxygen. Again, this atomic oxygen is as it is generated, which is extremely effective microbicidal or bactericidal. It kills all the germs. Next, another method is aeration, that is spraying the water into the air. Many communities at the community level they adopt this method. What they do is they spray the water into air in the presence of sunlight. The sprayed water is exposed to ultraviolet rays in the sun, which kills the microorganisms, and water is sterilized. On a community scale, this can be done, and many communities world over adopt this. And here the advantage is you are not adding any kind of chemical, not even chlorine. That's the advantage. The water remains as such. Okay, only the microorganism it is sterilized. It's only sterilized. This is the way in which water is prepared for the drinking purpose. Such sterilized water is pumped to houses. Okay, so this is the recapitulation. We have discussed again. We have recalled whatever we have learned in the earlier class. Now we'll go for the osmosis. Okay, now we'll go for the osmosis topic. Okay, osmosis. Osmosis is a process by which molecules of solvent tend to pass through a semi-permeable membrane. Okay, through a semi-permeable membrane from a less concentrated solution to a more concentrated solution. See, imagine you have I have a diagram. I'll explain. Okay, it's osmosis is a natural phenomena. It occurs naturally. It's a spontaneous process. That is, it occurs on its own. You do not spend any energy. For instance, you consider water. Where does water move? It always moves on its own from a higher altitude to a lower altitude, or water flows down the hill. Okay, so It is a spontaneous process. You need not spend any energy to that. Okay. Likewise, air always moves from a region of higher pressure to a region of lower pressure. In the social studies in the school, you must have studied land air currents, sea air currents, how they are generated. Okay, how the pressure varies. This pressure gradient causes the flow of air from one place to another place. Okay, all these things you have studied. So air always moves from higher pressure to lower pressure spontaneously on its own. Okay. So the know what is a spontaneous process. A spontaneous process occurs in its own on its own nature, on its own initiative, naturally. You need not spend any energy for this. Osmosis also is also a natural phenomena. In osmosis, whenever two solutions of different concentrations are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. Semi-permeable membrane means it allows only passage of solvent molecules through it. Okay, there are certain theories to explain the action of the semi-permeable membrane. We don't deal with that mechanism and all that. Okay, just remember that semi-permeable membrane is a membrane which allows only the movement of solvent particles, but not solid particles through it from one side to other. Okay. So that is so whenever two solutions of different concentrations are separated by a semi-permeable membrane, solvent diffuses or moves from solution of lower concentration to the solution of a higher concentration until the two concentrations become equal or isotonic. Okay. We'll see a few examples and mechanism also how it happens with the diagram. I am explaining it with the diagram here. Here you see on the left hand side in the beaker, okay, here we have filled a solution. It is made into two parts by the red dotted line. The red dotted line is actually the semi-permeable membrane. It is the semi-permeable membrane. Okay. On the right hand side you see more particles, those black circles like things, they represent particles, more solid particles. On the left hand side you have less solid particles. That means the concentration of solution on the right hand side is more and the concentration of the solution on the left hand side is less, and these two solutions are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. Now see the beaker on the right hand side. You leave it for say a few hours, and if you watch, the volume in the concentrated side has increased. You have not poured any solvent or any liquid into that, but this has happened. Correspondingly, the volume of the solution on the left hand side of the compartment it has decreased. Okay, and solid particles, solid particles there are 7 solid particles here on the less concentrated side of the solution. After osmosis also you can see all the 7 particles present on the left hand side in less concentrated solution. So the solid particles did not move, only solvent particles diffused through the semi-permeable membrane. Okay. To prevent this, say you have got a situation, two solutions of different concentrations are separated by a semi-permeable membrane, but still you don't want the osmosis to take place. You want to prevent the osmosis. You want to leave the setup like that. You don't want to change it, but at the same time you don't want diffusion of solvent into your concentrated solution to dilute it. So what can you do? On the concentrated side of solution you can apply some pressure. Okay, some pressure to prevent. How much pressure exactly prevents this inflow of or diffusion of solvent into concentrated solution? That pressure is called as osmotic pressure. Osmotic pressure is the pressure required to stop inflow of solvent into higher concentration solution of higher concentration from the solution of lower concentration when they are separated by semi-permeable membrane. Okay, it is the pressure required to stop the diffusion of the solvent from lower concentration solution to higher concentration solution, simply put. Okay, that is osmotic pressure. Okay, see, now you have understood the phenomena of osmosis. Definition of osmosis you have learned. You have understood the phenomenon of osmosis also. Phenomena of osmosis also. Okay. Now let us go for some. Let's see some examples of osmosis. Okay. Plants absorb water and minerals from the roots by the process of osmosis only. It's natural. It happens throughout the life of the plant. Okay, unhindered. They need not spend any extra energy. It's almost a physical. It's a physical process. Okay, this happens because the surrounding moisture concentration is low, and the concentration of cell sap of roots. The concentration of cells present in the root and their cell liquid cell sap is more. So the cell wall of these in the roots, cells in the roots, they act as semi-permeable membrane, and the concentration of water outside is less, so they move inside, and that sustains the growth of the plants. Okay. And another thing is, if you are in the bathtub or in water for a long time, swimming or doing something or other, okay, for a long time, your fingers get pruned. You can see that fingertips have changed. Okay, that's called pruning of the fingers. Okay, finger skin absorbs water, and this it gets expanded. Okay, an absorption of water. So this is also an example of osmosis. Another familiar example of osmosis is if you take grapes, take grapes and leave it, okay, grape bunch itself, leave it in the water for overnight. In the morning, you can see this the grapes have burst. All the grapes have burst. Okay, why does it happen? Because the skin of the grape acts as a semi-permeable membrane, and grape juice is at a higher concentration than the surrounding water. So the surrounding water enters the grapefruit through the skin of the grape, which is acting as a semi-permeable membrane, and it keeps on moving inside the grape. So at a point, the grape keeps on bulging, and at a point it bursts open. That's what happens. It's also a fine example of and a practical example of osmosis. Okay, now let us move on to the reverse osmosis. Okay, we said that osmosis is a natural phenomena and a spontaneous process. Okay, water flowing down the hill is a natural and a spontaneous process. You need not spend any energy. But in most of our houses, we have overhead tanks. Okay, water we suck either from our sump or all the way from the bore well, underground water, and regularly we fill the overhead tank, which supplies water to all parts of our home wherever water is required. Okay, so far so good. How do you send water from the underground or sump to overhead tank? You use electric motors. You spend electrical energy. Okay, you are spending energy here. You are forcing water to travel in a direction which is not natural. So it is a forced. Okay, it is a forced diffusion. Okay, forced sending of water. Okay, so you are expending energy. It's not spontaneous, nor is it natural. It's an artificial and non-spontaneous process. Okay, so in the osmosis, what happened? naturally on their own spontaneously water molecules move through a semi-permeable membrane from solution of lower concentration to solution of a higher concentration. The reverse osmosis is opposite to this. That is, the solvent molecules diffuse from solution of higher concentration into solution of lower concentration, just exactly opposite of the osmosis. Solvent molecules diffuse from solution of higher concentration into solution of lower concentration, okay, by the spending of energy or by the exertion of force. Okay, that's what the definition tells us. The forced diffusion of solvent from a solution of high concentration to a solution of lower concentration through semi-permeable membrane is called as reverse osmosis. Here you are forcing it to do it. It's artificial and unnatural and non-spontaneous. Okay. Now in the definition we'll see, try to explain the way the flow of solvent from solution of higher concentration to a solution of lower concentration on application of pressure, okay, on application of pressure higher than the osmotic pressure, on application of pressure higher than the osmotic pressure is called as reverse osmosis. So to stop osmosis, the pressure you have to exert on the concentrated solution is called as the exact amount of pressure you needed to apply to prevent flow of solvent from lower concentration solution to higher concentration solution is called as osmotic pressure. Okay, you have learned this. We have learned this in the earlier class. Just now we have learned. If you exert more pressure than the osmotic pressure, okay, if you osmotic pressure will stop the inflow of solvent from solution of lower concentration to higher concentration. Then if you exert still higher pressure, more pressure than the osmotic pressure, what happens is the solvent molecules start diffusing through the semi-permeable membrane from solution of higher concentration into the solution of lower concentration. This is exactly what's happening, is exactly opposite to the osmosis. So we call it as a reverse osmosis, in short RO. Okay, this RO is used for many purposes, but here you have to apply external pressure or external energy. Okay, this is also done by applying electricity also. This reverse osmosis is done applying reverse electricity also. We'll see how it happens when we go for electrodialysis. Okay, now let us see a few of the applications of reverse osmosis. Okay, yeah, first let us explain reverse osmosis with the help of a diagram for a better understanding. Okay, here you have got a U-shaped tube, okay, where you have two solutions of identical volume, same volume, which are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. What is a semi-permeable membrane? A semi-permeable membrane is a membrane that allows passage of solvent molecules only through it, but prevents passage of solid molecules. Okay, so here you got one dilute solution and one concentrated solution, okay, which are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. Okay, so if you leave it for a while, for a few hours, what happens is the volume of dilute solution decreases because solvent from dilute solution naturally by a spontaneous process moves into the concentrated solution or diffuses into the concentrated solution. Okay, diffuses into the concentrated solution. So the volume of a concentrated solution will increase, though the concentration decreases, the volume will increase, the volume of a dilute solution decreases. Osmosis, obviously you are demonstrating osmosis happening here. You can see in the next diagram. Okay, yeah, the concentration of dilute solution has decreased, the volume of dilute solution decreased, the volume of concentrated solution is increased. Okay. The extra volume of water which is increased in the concentrated solution, which exert by its weight, it exerts some pressure. Okay, that pressure is called as osmotic pressure, which can be denoted by P0. Okay, this P0 is the amount of pressure that will suffice, that is required, that is enough. If that amount of pressure is that is osmotic pressure P0 is applied on the concentrated solution, okay, it prevents inflow of dilute solution into the concentrated solution. If you on the concentrated solution side, if you apply extra osmotic pressure, osmosis will not take place at all. Okay, this is about osmosis and osmotic pressure. Okay, osmotic pressure may be defined as the quantity amount of pressure required to prevent inflow of solvent or diffusion of solvent from dilute solution to concentrated solution through semi-permeable membrane. So let us now see reverse osmosis. You are applying a pressure greater than osmotic pressure on the concentrated solution, greater than the osmotic pressure. Okay, so what happens now? The solvent molecules diffuse from the solution of concentrated solution into the dilute solution. So when excess pressure is applied, okay, excess than osmotic pressure, the P applied is greater than P0, that is osmotic pressure. Okay, now what is happening? The volume of concentrated solution is decreasing and the volume of dilute solution is increasing. Okay, so this is happening against opposite to the osmosis. This flow is opposite to the flow of osmosis. So this is called as reverse osmosis. That is how we explain the forced diffusion of solvent from a concentrated solution to a dilute solution, okay, through a semi-permeable membrane is called as reverse osmosis. That's what we have discussed. Okay, is it clear? Are things clear? Okay. The applications of reverse osmosis. See, the applications of reverse osmosis are, okay, purification of drinking water. See, in the purification of drinking water, on one side of the for purification of drinking water, pure water is taken, and on one side pure water is taken, and the other side any solution or salt water is taken. Okay, salt water is taken, which are separated by a semi-permeable membrane. Okay, if a high pressure is added, applied to the solution side, water molecules will go into the pure water, okay, and salts will remain in the solution side itself. So the volume of pure water will increase. So in effect, what are you doing? You are preparing your drinking water. So purification of drinking water, that is removal of dissolved impurities from the drinking water. For that reverse osmosis process is used. Actually, we are purchasing water bubbles, water cans, right? Daily for domestic use, many of you use the water cans. You know it very well, right? So these water cans or water bubbles, water bottles are prepared. The water is prepared by reverse osmosis process. In this reverse osmosis process, all salts, all ions, all are removed from the water. Okay, and only water will be there. Mistakenly, we call this water as mineral water, but actually it is not mineral water. It is a demineralized water. Okay, so that is how reverse osmosis is a process which is used for preparation of drinking water. Especially, it is used basic process here is in all applications is removal of dissolved salts from the water or impurities from the water. That's what happens. So it is also used in the wastewater purification or sewage water treatment also we use reverse osmosis process. Okay, it is also used for concentration of fruit juices. See, fruit juices, the water weight is very high, very large. Fruit juices, if the water is not removed, their volume will be more. Okay, their weight will also be more. They cannot be exported. It will be difficult to export them. So, from fruit juices, water is removed by reverse osmosis process, RO process, and the concentration of fruit juices will increase. That shelf life will also increase. It will be easier to transport them and export them. Okay. Likewise, in the reverse osmosis process is also used in the preparation of egg powder. Okay, in the preparation of egg powder from the dry eggs. Okay, it's a big industry, and it is also used for preparation of protein powder. Egg powder is more or less protein powder itself, and this RO process is beneficially being used in the desalination of seawater. In our India, Chennai is a water-starved city. It has got it doesn't have any reliable water supply. Water is very scarce there. So the government, Tamil Nadu government, has set up many desalination plants near the sea coast, which remove salts from the sea water and transport the fresh water through the pipeline and supply to the Chennai Sea. In many Arab countries also they are using same process to get water. That is the RO process lifeline. It is providing life to many water-starved countries, states, cities, etc. So desalination of seawater to produce fresh water is done through reverse osmosis process itself. Have you heard about dialysis? Dialysis is a process of removal of impurities from the blood. Actually, in a healthy person like us, okay, I am also healthy, though I am a bit old than you are, much older than you. I keep fit, I am also healthy. So, in healthy persons, blood is filtered where? In the body. Which organs? Yeah, that is kidneys. Kidneys filter our blood and remove impurities from the blood, okay, and recycle the blood back. Glomerulus is the organ which actually filters the blood in the kidney. Okay, in certain patients, kidneys fail to perform this function. Okay, so they go to the hospital. Okay, their blood is flown through a special dialysis machine. Okay, which removes impurities from the blood. Again, the blood is flowed back to the body. Okay, this process is called as dialysis, and this dialysis life-saving process also uses based on reverse osmosis technique itself. Dialysis is also based on reverse osmosis technique. Okay, we can prepare milk powder also through the reverse osmosis. Okay, we have seen a number of advantages of the process, the reverse osmosis process. Okay, but let's also see what are the advantages of this reverse osmosis process. What are the advantages? The advantages of RO process are, chief advantage is okay, it efficiently removes the dissolved salts in the water. Very difficult otherwise to remove the dissolved salts. Okay, no filtration will do that. Okay, it efficiently removes dissolved salts, dissolved substances from the water to produce fresh drinking water. And another chief thing is it's a physical process. Reverse osmosis is a physical process. It doesn't add any chemical. It doesn't add any chemical to the water. Okay, so it is safer for us as well as to the environment. Okay, these two are the chief advantages and undeniable advantages, unparalleled advantages of the reverse osmosis process. Okay, now we'll move on to desalination. Desalination by electrodialysis. Dialysis with the help of electricity is called as electrodialysis. Okay. In the dialysis, the technique involved is reverse osmosis itself. Okay. Since the process is called as dialysis, if it is aided by electricity, we call that as electrodialysis. Electrodialysis is an something like RO only, not exactly RO here. It's like something like RO. Electrodialysis is an electrochemical process in which ion transfer separates salt from water. Here, salts are removed from the water by means of ion transfers. Okay, where ions move towards separate electrodes, opposite charge electrodes. So here the electricity drives the movement of ions. In the RO process, the solvent is moved, then the ions are retained. Here, in the process of electrodialysis, it is the ions, those are moved. The ions are removed instead of but the solvent remains where it is. Only ions move by the application of electricity. Okay, this is called as electrodialysis. In this electrodialysis, okay, filters or membranes are selectively in this electrodialysis, we have two electrodes kept at sides. Okay, between these electrodes, two electrodes are kept on the either side of the container, and between these electrodes, many membranes or filters are placed. Okay, these filters selectively allow either positively charged ions or negatively charged ions, either cations or anions to move through them. Okay, so in electrodialysis, filters or membranes are placed between the electrodes, and these are selectively impervious to cations or anions. Okay, cation filters forbid flow of only anions but act as a barrier to the cations, positively charged cations. Likewise, anion filters allow selective flow of cations and act as barriers to the negatively charged anions. Okay, so let us see the diagram. You will be able to appreciate things better. Okay, the principle of electrodialysis. Okay, see here at one end you have cathode, at the bottom you have at the top you have cathode, at the bottom you have anode, in between you have various membranes. Okay, various membranes. These membranes are called filters. They are either membranes or these are filters. These membranes are filters. What they do is they allow flow of ions selectively. Okay, cation filters allow anion, flow of anions, and anion filters allow only flow of cations. Okay, so here in the electrodialysis, instead of movement of solvent molecules, as in the case of reverse osmosis, here ions are moved. Actually, dialysis ions are moved. Okay, this is about electrodialysis. The diagram neatly explains. Okay. Then the last topic in our syllabus is the Nalgonda technique. The Nalgonda technique. We have got one national agency called National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, NEERI it is called as in short. It is situated at Nagpur. It does various research, it continues research on environmental issues. And see, fluorine content in the water is a rampant problem in many states, in many parts of India. In our own state, Telangana, Nalgonda, erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, Nalgonda, Guntur, these parts are affected by fluorosis. Okay, the water contains far more fluorine content than is permissible for the drinking water. If this high fluorine water with the high fluorine content is consumed, okay, actually fluorine has reacts, it has got lot of affinity for calcium. It reacts with the calcium present in the body. Where is calcium present in the body? In the bones and our teeth. Bones and teeth are made up of calcium phosphate, apart from other things. Chief material is chief structural material in bones and teeth is calcium phosphate. So it removes, fluorine reacts with the calcium in these bones and teeth, removes calcium from the bones and teeth. The bones and teeth become very weak and person suffers the consequent problems. These problems faced by excess fluorine content is called as a disease called fluorosis. Okay. Our NEERI, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute at Nagpur, has evolved way back in 70s a cost-effective method, okay, to remove fluoride content from the water. It is first applied in Nalgonda district of our present Telangana or then Andhra Pradesh. So this commonly came to be known as widely, okay, as a Nalgonda technique. Okay, let us see what happens in the Nalgonda technique. The process consists of comprise of addition in sequence. Okay, addition of sodium aluminate. First we add sodium aluminate, then lime or bleaching powder and lime, to the water containing excess of fluorine. Okay, then what happens is we have already seen previously the sodium aluminate cause flocculation. Flocculation means okay, it neutralizes the charge present on the colloidal particles, whereby the colloidal particles come together and form larger aggregates, larger mass, having substance having larger mass or larger aggregates. Okay, this process whereby the small microscopic colloidal particles come together and form larger particles or larger aggregates is called flocculation. So now they, instead of being microscopic or colloidal dimensions of 1000 nanometers to 1 nanometer diameter, okay, very small particles, they are coming together, joining together to form a larger mass. When they form larger mass on standing and leaving undisturbed for some time, they come under the gravitational pull and settle down at the bottom in the form of a precipitate. This water can be filtered and see the fluorine content is also precipitated like this. Okay, and this can be filtered and these solids can be removed. Thereby fluorine is effectively removed from the water. Okay, this technique is extremely useful both for domestic as well as community water supply. It's extremely useful for domestic as well as community water supply. At the household level, you can purify water like this, remove fluoride content, or in a community also, for a village also you can do it. Okay, both ways is applicable. Yeah, let's see a flow sheet, flow chart. Okay, Nalgonda technique. This is used for, can be used for community as well as domestic water supplies on a large scale, on a domestic level also. Okay, it requires addition of first they are added one by one. Remember, first sodium aluminate is added and the water is stirred, then bleaching powder is added, the water is stirred, then lime is added to reduce pH, bring pH to the basic condition. Okay, alkaline, to make the water alkaline. Okay, so in alkaline pH this the substances will flocculate. Okay, flocculate means form into larger aggregates, big sized particles. Okay, as the size increases, they come under gravitational pull, they precipitate down, that is called sedimentation. This sediments or solids can be removed. The fluoride is came out in the form of precipitate, which can be filtered and removed. The water can be used for drinking purposes. That's all for this lecture. Thank you. With this we are completing the water technology. If you have any doubts, you can call me.